Mr. President, good afternoon. Thank you for welcoming us in these difficult times, but as we all know, difficult times require talking and awareness, and that's what we're here for. So just to begin with, could you please go through the latest of what you know about what's going on in the conflict zone and answer a straightforward question? Is the ceasefire working?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank RT and the leadership and you, Ilya, for this interview. As you said, it's difficult times, and difficult times are also the times when you have to talk, and especially to talk to friends. I consider RT as a friendly news agency and impartial, independent, and also some television station that can provide people with the right information, which is truthful.
We appreciate that.
And to straightforward answer your question, the answer is unfortunately not. The ceasefire is not kept fully, and it's not only my words, it's the recognition by a lot of international monitors and from Armenian side as well, and was just recognized a couple of hours ago by Foreign Minister of Russian Federation, Mr. Lavrov. And I would say again that it's unfortunate because violating the ceasefire means also bombing, shelling, killings, and more human lives are lost, both on the front line between Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh and Azerbaijan, but also more and more civilians are losing their innocent lives in this conflict.
So are there violations on the part of Armenia? And if there are, why is it happening?
This is probably not the time or the platform for you and me, Ilya, to start discussing about how the ceasefire is not kept. Are there violations of ceasefire or not? Definitely there are violations, and as far as I understand, if one violates, the other one answers. So violations are there, they are unfortunate, and I think all parties have to put a lot of efforts in order to stop it. And of course, it's very, very important to have mechanism or verification who is breaking the ceasefire. I mean, these are many ways of doing that, internationally, using technology, but it should be put in place. Because until the ceasefire is not established fully, the humanitarian side of this ceasefire will not be, neither of sides will be able to use that. And of course, International Red Cross, that is asked in order to be a part of this humanitarian act, will not be able to work there. So ceasefire, basically monitoring the ceasefire, making sure that it works, is absolute necessity.
Well, you are saying that this is a matter of responding to the fire. Is there a possibility of some kind of disagreements or different opinions in the Armenian or pro-Armenian military, possibly a more radical lobby or approach, or people that were against the ceasefire? And who is to blame for the latest damage and victims in Azerbaijan away from the epicenter of the conflict? For example, the reports of shelling in Ganja came in after the ceasefire was announced.
Well, the answer, I will try to answer you and make a couple of points. Point number one, in the case of the bombing or shelling Ganja in Azerbaijan, I have clear information from my government, from Ministry of Defense, and for Foreign Minister, and Foreign Minister have spoken about that already, and in his interviews to even Al Jazeera, that it's definitely not Armenia that has shelled it. That's number one. Number two, when you are speaking about breaking the ceasefire, it was unfortunately immediately after the ceasefire was announced at 12 o'clock, Stepanakert, the capital city of Artsakh Republic, was shelled. And I'm speaking about civilian shellings as well. Third, we should not forget in this account the real fact, who started this stage of war. It was the Azeri side, clearly, not the people of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic of Artsakh. And the way it started, unfortunately, was not shellings, bombings, or fighting on the ground, on the front line, but it started with bombing of capital of Karabakh, Stepanakert, civilians and civilian objects, because there are no military objects in Stepanakert. So bombing civilians, like civilians in the villages or civilians in the cities, including the capital city, Martaket, and other cities, is an act of brutal violation of human rights.
But can we go back to my earlier question? Could there be any discord within the Armenian military? Could there be a different view on how to fight this war?
If you are speaking about Armenia and the Ministry of Defense, I'm pretty sure there is only one opinion, and not only one opinion, but one behavior, which comes from the government, from the Prime Minister's office, from the Ministry of Defense, and so on and so forth, from the General Staff. For a simple reason, because the Prime Minister is in charge of, as the top executive officer in the government, to run all of these activities. Well, if I had any information like that, I would be the first one to pick up the phone and speak to my Minister of Defense and to the Prime Minister. But I don't have any information like that you were referring to.
Well, Mr. President, just again, to make it clear, when you were saying that you are unaware of any shelling or bombing of Ganja from the Armenian side, would you say that this is a staged provocation in that case?
This war is continuing more than 2 weeks already. Partially now with the ceasefire on, and before in a full scale, and go into the details, was this a provocation or not, is a detail. Well, the big picture is that 27th of September, Azerbaijan decided that they are no longer interested in going ahead with negotiations around the table of the OSCE Minsk group. And basically for this or that reason, they decided that they go back around 30 years back when the first Karabakh war started and try it again to resolve the issue with military force. Not only as a president of the republic, but as someone that was following this whole process for many years, I can assure you that it's not only that I don't believe it, analytically when I think about it, logically there is no military solution to this. Fighting for your home is not about mathematics. It's not about numbers. It's not about how many bombs and shells, what sort of technology you have. Maybe that helps you at the early stage, the first day, the first week, the second week, but then it becomes much more about what are you fighting for. And in the case of Nagorno-Karabakh or people of Artsakh, they're fighting for their home and for their homeland. And that homeland is not an abstract one. It's the home that them, their grandfathers, and the grandparents of their grandparents, and so on and so forth, thousands of years have lived. And they lived and created a special culture, which is Armenian, because they're Armenians, but that lived in a specific region, very proud, very people that know how to fight for themselves. They have shown them during the whole history, they have seen invaders starting from Genghis Khan, the great Timur, Persian Empire, and so on and so forth. They were proudly a part of Russian Empire as well, but they were never a part of Azerbaijan. I mean, Azerbaijan, Soviet Socialist Republic, got Nagorno-Karabakh as a great gift from Comrade Stalin for 65 years. But what happened then, even those 65 years, Nagorno-Karabakh had an autonomy, an absolute majority of Armenians living there. But there it comes to the main question. How on earth, after 65 years that Azerbaijan had being sort of in charge of Nagorno-Karabakh, because everybody was a part of the greater country or empire, Soviet Union, and under the watch of the Soviet leadership, Azerbaijan has managed to basically not not gain the trust of people of Nagorno-Karabakh. I mean, this word is very important, trust. This is one of the reasons why in 1991, Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, or people of Nagorno-Karabakh, decided with the breakdown of Soviet Union that they are ready to vote in a organized, according to all rules, referendum and vote for independence. Why? Because one important word was missing, trust. They didn't trust Azerbaijan as a country that they could live together. Because even under Soviet rule, Azerbaijan was doing everything to push Armenians out of Nagorno-Karabakh. I mean, the schools were closed. A lot of Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh, their first language for many years was Russian, and for a simple reason, except speaking at home Armenian, they were going to Russian schools because they didn't want to go to Azeri schools. They were going to Russian schools. How on earth anybody thinks that people of Nagorno-Karabakh can trust Azerbaijan now after the first war, after the second war, after losses of so many lives, to trust them to live under an autonomy under Azerbaijan? I think it's quite impossible.
Let me put it this way. What's more important for the Armenian government under the current given circumstances? Human lives, the status of Karabakh, or Karabakh borders?
Well, you can never simplify complex politics. You can never simplify human behavior, I think, bringing to a simple formula. What is for me more important? Everything is important because they are interconnected. I think that human lives are priority number one in any, well, if you ask me personally, for me, human life is the most important thing. And if we are thinking about resolving Karabakh issue or any conflict, I think what you have to put as an access to this solution or a process is the human life. And it doesn't matter the age, the race, the color of your skin, or your religion. What is the absolute value is the human life. So human life, but how do you protect that human life? You protect that human life through specific institutions or specific guarantees, which in this case could be your status of your state, or the soldier that is standing on the border. So they are all interconnected, and there's no way that you can say this is more important than the other one. The most important, at the end of the day, is the human life.
But at the same time, when I was talking to my colleagues that are actually working there, that they were telling me it felt like hell, and towns were being bombed. And in that sense, some people were saying that it seemed that the Republic was not prepared at all. Although we do understand—
Which republic?
The Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh.
Is not prepared for what?
For this kind of situation when the towns are being destroyed.
So historically, these people have always been fighting. Well, of course, there's always criticism to every government. Well, have you seen any government which is not criticized, even with the biggest victories? There's always a thing that you regret. I have a second thought. I should have done this before. But one thing that we all have to regret here is that the start of the new war. And that decision was not made by the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, by the leadership of Nagorno-Karabakh, or by the leadership of Armenia. That decision was made by Azerbaijan. And they started 2 weeks ago this war. And they are going to bear the sort of moral responsibility for that. It's not Karabakh that started this war.
But that doesn't mean that you couldn't have seen it coming.
Well, basically, yes, of course. I think the war never stopped in Karabakh. Even with the ceasefire in '94, I would say that we all didn't succeed, to put it diplomatically, to keep on the track of negotiations and a dialogue here. In the case of Nagorno-Karabakh, if you think and you ask them, what do you think is victory for you? The victory for them is is just protecting their homeland. Nothing more. No more Azeri territory, no more of this or that. Just protecting their homeland and homes and their families. When you ask Azeris if I am going to judge by the remarks done by Azeri side, this is about Nagorno-Karabakh without Armenians. Well, in modern world, there's a word for that which is called ethnic cleansing, okay? Even if you manage with ethnic cleansing, that war, human war, will not be over ever, okay? I mean, maybe there'll be no physical war, maybe you will control the land, but there'll be a human moral sort of a fight that will continue. And an example of that is the Armenian genocide that happened 105 years ago. 1.5 million people perished. Was it over? No. Why it's not over? There are so many countries that have recognized the Armenian genocide. There are so many of us, including Russian Federation. There are so many countries that are blaming Turkey. There are so many countries, when they look at what's happening in Nagorno-Karabakh, including also Armenians that live, millions and millions of Armenians that live in diaspora, their interpretation of what is happening in and around Nagorno-Karabakh now, especially with the involvement of Turkey, is another attempt of a genocide, another attempt of ethnic cleansing. Basically, I'm so sorry. I think when we speak about anybody claiming territory in Nagorno-Karabakh from Armenians, who can claim that? People have been living there for thousands of years.
Would you agree that the air defense system was a complete failure? Because again, the Republic is destroyed. I understand that you're not the Minister of Defense, but still.
So that's one question. Give me another one. I would like to have 2, 3.
Another one would be, perhaps, what is the ultimate goal for the Armenian government, hopefully, when this particular escalation is over?
As you mentioned yourself, I'm not the defense minister. I'm not involved in detail in this or that defense systems, okay? But I will take you the answer towards somewhere else. In our new military world, Nagorno-Karabakh Republic had whatever they had, okay? In our new world, a lot of military equipment, technology, weapons are very closely connected to finances, money, okay? Let's look at that issue from a different perspective, which has been sort of used quite often in recent 2 months, especially by Turkey. When Turkey entered this conflict, well, they were always there advising, helping, planning and all of that stuff, but this time it was quite openly and quite sort of a pushfully and just getting in there. And you can get that from the political announcements, from the wording of the president, foreign minister, and the very aggressive mood of that, up to the presence of military personnel, starting from general staff to advisors.
He didn't mince his words, yeah.
I mean, one doesn't have to even prove that. And of course, Turkey is the one that brought Islamic militants and terrorists into Azerbaijan. And I don't have to prove that either, because it's now internationally recognized by many, including Russian Federation and special departments of Russian Federation. But of course, as usual, Turkey was doing you need an excuse. Why on earth you are doing that? And one of the excuses why Azeris are our ethnic brothers. Well, it doesn't work in the New World, because your ethnic brothers go up to Central Asia, Mongolia, up to the north of China. Are you ready to interfere or any problem that your ethnic brothers will get there? Maybe yes. Because if I looked at modern Turkey, I mean, 360 degrees, Turkey has problems. It had problems in Egypt. It is involved now in Libya. Well, is it ethnic brothers or something else? It's a different story. Turkey speaks about territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, but in the meantime, they have crossed the borders with Iraq. They are speaking about territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. They have crossed the border to Syria. They are trying to be very, very present in Lebanon, in the Gulf. Well, they have their big issues now in the Eastern Mediterranean, and now they are in Caucasus, 360 degrees. That's one. Second, they were speaking about PKK fighters, absolute nonsense. Third one, they were speaking about the pipelines that are running from Baku to Tbilisi, Ceyhan, gas and oil pipelines. Why I'm referring to this? Because the motivation was that Armenians will hit them, and we're here to protect them. I'm sorry, where's the logic? If Armenians had to hit that pipelines, they should have hit that 20 years ago. 20 years ago, when they were starting to build the pipeline, a couple of shellings would stop the pipelines being built. Armenians didn't do that, and they didn't do that more than 20 years. No shelling, no one bullet was fired. Armenians allowed Azerbaijan to build the pipelines, to sell their oil and gas, and not only theirs, but from Caspian and also from the Central Asia, make billions of dollars, and use that billions of dollars buying billions of dollars of worth of armament, and then use that against Nagorno-Karabakh. And that brings to a conclusion. Billions of dollars.
So that's money and Turkish support.
Money and Turkish support has created, and with money and Turkish support, you can come over any moderate air defense system that Nagorno-Karabakh had. So when are you saying, oh, how on earth, because Nagorno-Karabakh doesn't have oil, how on earth, because Armenians were proper citizens of this planet, they were not shelling the pipeline, stopping Azeris making money.
And what about the ultimate goals for your government, the government of Armenia?
Well, the ultimate goal is to stop the war, return back to the table of negotiations, and finally go to the right direction. And there is only one right direction, which is there is no alternative to the final status and resolution of the Nagorno-Karabakh final status, except normal human negotiations. The process of negotiations is not only about the formula and final status, it is also very, very important that during the negotiations, people gradually, with difficulty, sometimes with unhappiness, are creating trust.
What is the realistic vision? I mean, we understand that we're not going to go back to the same status quo as it used to be. That's just impossible at this point.
Well, the thing is, I think it is so premature today to start talking about what's going to happen to us tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, when we have not been able to solve today's problem. And today's actual problem is the ceasefire. Because the process itself will define it. I think if I'm going to say, this is what I want, and the other side will say, this is what I want, we are quite apart from each other. And that's why the whole process of negotiations is important, to bring them together. In fact, during the last 20 years of negotiating, a lot of differences were resolved. And you have to trust me. There were several of them which were not resolved. There were principal ones that needed political courage and decision. But otherwise, and when you are speaking of a conflict of this scale and size, there are so many details that look like details, but you have to negotiate them. So all of that was done. Now it's broken, but there is no other way. You have to start negotiating again. I mean, for us, it's very important, I told you. I think it's that Nagorno-Karabakh people and the Republic, they don't see any other solution except Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh living freely in their homeland with dignity. And for every Armenian worldwide, including in Armenia and in diaspora, what is important, not to have the danger of another ethnic cleansing and genocide. But what will be the outcome? I'm sorry, Ilya, well, I will restrain myself to coming up with a prediction or speculation, because it will look like more speculation rather than hope or a vision. What I'm saying today, it's the time to stop the war. I mean, you look now at the city of Stepanakert. Well, even from a drone. I mean, it looks like it's a city after the Second World War.
That's what I was asking you about.
I mean, how on earth these people, when they every day they wake up and go every and each time to a shelter, and they live in a city that they have restored after the First War with love, because it's a beautiful city, and now it's completely destroyed. Let me give you an example. In Shushi, there is a church of the Christ the Savior. It's a beautiful church built in 19th century. More or less the same time there was a mosque built in Shushi, because there was Azeri minority living in Shushi. And after the First War, both of them were destroyed. You know, the government of Nagorno-Karabakh, with the help of donations coming from Armenians abroad, I don't want to give names, and some non-Armenians, friends, and some of them are not Christian at all, they were Muslim. The church of the Christ the Savior was restored, the cathedral, okay? And then what happened after a couple of years, the mosque was restored. So this is Armenian approach. So what happened with the war starting now? Azeris targeted the church, the monastery. And you know who was there inside? Women and children. Not weapons, including journalists, including Russian journalists. They were hit, they were wounded.
The number one motivation for Friday's talks in Moscow was to avoid a humanitarian disaster. What's been done so far in that regard, and what are the numbers for the refugees, for the casualties? That's the saddest part. Have all the refugees been moved to safe zones? Have all the vulnerable people been evacuated from Nagorno-Karabakh?
Well, humanitarian has many layers here. Of course, humanitarian means also stopping the war on the front line, allowing international organization, humanitarian ones like the Red Cross, that to help the withdraw the wounded, the dead, and the bodies and everything. Humanitarian also is to look what is happening, because a lot of people have lost their friends, their relatives. Humanitarian also means about, because we have a big number of refugees now from Nagorno-Karabakh. As a president of a country, I am proud to say that what I found with the first day of the war, that there is a national unity here. As an example of that is the way people self-organize them in order to take care of refugees from Artsakh, from Nagorno-Karabakh. I mean, even before the government has started to move the Ministry of Social Affairs and so on, the Ministry of Health, volunteers, thousands of them, starting taking care of them.
Do you have the latest numbers, or at least possibly estimates?
Well, it's big. It's big.
Okay.
It's very big. We're speaking about thousands and thousands of people.
The role of Russia. Has Moscow done enough, not only as a peace broker, but also as an ally of Armenia?
Well, I think I have defined for myself personally several important principles when I think about Russia's policies in Caucasus. The one was recently reminded by President Putin, I think it was on the 7th of October, saying clearly that Russia has relations with Armenia. There are treaties signed, both political, military, and Armenia is also a part of treaty organization. And President Putin made it clear that Russia is going to own every and each agreement. It's absolutely clear message to one of the principles that I think it's important for Russia and Russia's policies in Caucasus. And I salute that, because this is showing that Russia is a reliable partner. The second thing is that Russia also has good relations with Azerbaijan. Russia has very good relations with Azerbaijan and very good relations with Armenia. There's so much balance that the two sides can trust Russia as a mediator. And that's very important. It's not only that two sides can trust the mediator, that that side, the third side, which is Russian Federation, is taking the very hard responsibility of being a mediator. It's not easy, huh? So it's trust and responsibility that brings sides together to start talking, and basically I hope that we will get finally a ceasefire, and then we'll start building up on that ceasefire. And Russia's role is crucial. Of course, it's only important that there is this platform, which is the OSCE Minsk group. They are the co-chairs. And the three presidents, starting from President Trump, President Macron, and President Putin, have appealed to the sides. And I would say, well, of course, President Trump is busy now with the elections, while President Macron, representing Europe, is very actively involved. There's only one thing that I can say, thanks to President Macron, but of course Russia's role is special.
You must have heard, though, a radically different assessment from the Turkish president, from Tayyip Erdogan, who actually called decades of efforts by the Minsk group lame and useless. What would you respond to that? And that came straight after the joint statement by Presidents Macron, Trump, and Putin.
Well, I think my comments will be, first of all, it shows the deep not understanding the whole peace process. It also shows, unfortunately, the attitude, how to resolve international disputes. It also shows probably that the goal of Turkey are completely different in the area, including in Azerbaijan. And they are not targeting, for example, resolving Nagorno-Karabakh issue, but they have something else on their agenda. As I told, some analysts say that the real goal of Turkey getting involved here is not only Nagorno-Karabakh, to teach Armenians a lesson and to remind that they will never recognize the genocide, but also maybe to have stronger presence in Azerbaijan.
What makes you treat the presence of Syrian Islamist mercenaries on the ground fighting alongside Azerbaijani troops as a fact? And also, Mr. President, you mentioned the PKK fighters. Can you rule out completely the involvement of Kurdish fighters there?
Absolutely. That's absolute nonsense. But if you find one of them, you're a journalist, just give me a call, please. Huh? If you want a trace of one. Yes, indeed, in Armenia, there are the citizens of Armenia and citizens of Nagorno-Karabakh of Kurdish, but mostly Yazidi origin. They are ethnically Kurdish, but they belong to a different faith, which is the Yazidi faith. You know, what is important, I think, every and each time, as I told you before, every and each question, the one type of that you just asked me, which is provoked by Turkish side, but in reality is a question that questions the fact that Armenians can defend their homeland. Because they need someone to come and help. I was asked by many journalists, what do you think about will Russia come and support? I mean, Nagorno-Karabakh or Armenia. Will Iran come and work, or the third party? What we are trying to give a message is that we don't want anyone to be involved. We don't want anyone. What we don't want any inclusion. We don't want to complicate the thing. We want an exclusion of one, which is Turkey. If Turkey comes out, I can assure you the ceasefire will be stable and for a long period of time. The moment Azerbaijan starts a war, and with shelling and using of all possible modern equipment that they have bought from worldwide and brought into there, that's a different story. Supplying of Azerbaijan with absolute modern weaponry, they should expect people of Nagorno-Karabakh retaliating and fighting, because they have a strong motivation. They fight for life, not for piece of land. They fight for their life and their homeland and their dignity.
Mr. President, with all that support from Turkey, with the money, with the advanced weaponry, why would Turkey or Azerbaijan want to involve Syrian Islamists there?
Well, you ask them. I don't know.
But you are confident they're there?
No, it's not only me confident. You can ask, well, that Mr. Narishkin announced that, and he was not the only head of foreign intelligence of a specific country like Russia, but all the others. So I'm not only confident, we have so many proofs of that. I'm not here to start proving it to you when it's a proven thing. I don't know why. Ask Mr. Erdogan or Mr. Aliyev why they have brought these people there.
Realistically, is there a possibility that now a peacekeeping mission could help and could be brought in, and who could take up the job?
Well, I'm open. As a president, I'm open to any idea, and this is not something that has restrictions. But I think in order to come to peacekeepers are people that will be there if the both sides will agree. You cannot have peacekeepers on one side. Then they're not peacekeepers.
You agree, though?
Sorry?
You do agree, though?
Well, basically, it depends on how the process, peace talks will follow. I think everything is on table if we have a ceasefire, and if we come back again, two sides to a negotiating table, then they can discuss anything. Peacekeepers, mandate, issues, timing, everything. And it's premature for even someone like me to say, this is acceptable, this is not. Why? I give you another very strong example of that. For years, starting from the first day when Nagorno-Karabakh declared independence, then it was a part of Soviet Union, and then the Supreme Soviet of Armenian Soviet Social Republic has voted that they should recognize the Nagorno-Karabakh as an independent state or maybe even part of Armenia. But later the leadership of Armenia wisely stopped this process. Why? Because it is so simple. They are your people, as President Erdogan would say. You are not ethnically your brothers, they are your brothers.
By the way,
why didn't Armenia recognize it for all of these years? For a simple reason. For a simple reason. Because in Armenia we do understand, by recognizing, we are adding another complication to the peace process. For years and years, Armenia didn't recognize, to give a chance to peace talks to succeed and to get to final resolution and the status of Nagorno-Karabakh through negotiations. And if the negotiations, final resolution recognizes Karabakh's independence and so on, so then Armenia would recognize as well. So while not recognizing the independence of Nagorno-Karabakh or Nagorno-Karabakh as a part of Armenia, we're giving a chance to negotiations. Very important issue. Of course, if now the war will continue and there will be no chance for going back to negotiations, of course Armenia will not have any other choice rather than to recognize and go and support their brothers. But there is a hope for going back to negotiations. There is a hope for ceasefire, and that's why Armenia today is not doing that even today. Now it comes back to your question about this, about that in the future. It's premature. Let's give the chance to ceasefire, and let's give a chance to people coming back to negotiations and defining the parameters of negotiations. Let's not complicate.
Mr. President, I understand the reason is very unfortunate and tragic, but judging from what you told me, you feel that Russia and Armenia have become closer after this flare-up. Would you say that?
Our closeness cannot be judged on the level of today's politics, cannot be judged on the level of announcements or attitudes or decisions by groups, some parties. I think our relations were and are and I'm sure will be very deep, much deeper than political events on the surface. Because to answer this question, it will take me again the same word that we were using several times today: trust. And this is not just a trust of two unknown, it's a trust that comes for several centuries.
President Sarkisyan, thank you very much for the trust, and let's just keep building it, and thanks a lot for defining so many complex things for us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to talk to you, Ilya.